Have you ever wondered how to best study for a certification exam to have the best chances of passing? Well, stay tuned. Adam Olshansky is going to discuss tips on how to study and sit for your exam. Welcome to 100 Days of Trailhead, where the tech community comes to learn Salesforce, learn tech, get inspired, and invest in ourselves. We are your trail guides, here to support you on your learning journey. We release videos weekly. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a video. In the description below, you can find links for everything we mention in this video, as well as books and resources we found useful. Visit our blog, 100daysoftrailhead.com, for other helpful Salesforce and tech content. Having a strategy to approach studying and taking a certification exam can be the difference between passing and failing. Adam Olshansky is a Salesforce MVP, a Salesforce developer at Google with 15 Salesforce certifications. Adam is extremely passionate about the Salesforce community and believes in giving back as much as he can while teaching others the magic of Salesforce.
Hi there, my name is Adam Olshansky, and I'm happy to talk about my top 5 certification studying tips on behalf of 100 Days of the Trailhead. I know a little bit about studying for Salesforce certifications. I have 14 of them, including an application of system architect. I'm a Salesforce engineer at Google, and also a Salesforce MVP. Happy to connect with the Salesforce community on Twitter at Adam17AMO, and also feel free to check out my blog at adam2architect.com. And so with that, let's get into the tips. My first tip is kind of for me, but I think it's good advice for everybody. Just schedule the exam. I'm one of those people that I like having a to-do list. And for me, if something's not on my to-do list, it's always going to get done eventually, right? If something doesn't have a deadline, it's probably not going to be a priority. And so for me, scheduling the exam is really the most important thing. Just so it's kind of on the calendar and I have kind of a date to shoot for. I can, schedule my studying appropriately, and it's always in the back of my mind. This is something that I really want to go after because I made the commitment to scheduling it. On top of scheduling it, I'm also a big believer in investing in yourself. And for me, certifications, especially when I was starting in the Salesforce ecosystem back in 2015 or 2014 rather, was really kind of my way of investing in myself. Right, certification exams aren't cheap. But I think I'm a big believer that by investing in yourself, paying for the exam up front, the payoff when you get your next job later is oftentimes going to more than make up for it. And so just scheduling the exam is really kind of a commitment to yourself that, look, I'm making this investment in me, and this is going to be my deadline for getting that next certification. And the other thing about scheduling the exam is that you can always move it. Life gets in the way, especially the last couple of years. But just having it on the calendar gives you a date to shoot for. If you have to end up moving it, that's okay too. All right, my number 2 tip is go through the study guide, right? Study guide's not a trick. It's there for a reason. And as somebody who sometimes helps write some of the Salesforce exams as well, we write the exam based off the study guide, right? If there's a 60-question exam and 10% are going to be on a certain topic, there's going to be 6 questions on that topic. And so the study guide is a great way for telling you exactly what is on the exam. With that, by knowing what's on the exam, it also starts to kind of go through and figure out what you know and what you don't. And by going through the study guide, you can kind of maybe reassure yourself you already know a lot of things on the exam. Maybe also identify maybe what you need to work on a little bit more and maybe do some follow-up studying on, right? These are things that maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't, but it might be good to kind of just make a mental note. Hey, there's 10 different topics on the exam. Maybe you know 7 well and 3 you need to brush up on a little bit more. And that's going to also help you when you're figuring out when you're going to study and how much you're going to study. You can kind of prioritize the things maybe you need to work on a little bit accordingly. And then the last thing about going through the study guide is it's always one of my biggest fears is I'm going to show up for the exam and there's going to be a question about something I've never heard of before. And Salesforce is so big nowadays, it's impossible to know everything about everything, let alone everything about a certain topic even. And by going through the study guide, that'll kind of give you at least some peace of mind that you know everything that's going to be asked about on the exam. There's no kind of terminology that you haven't seen before, haven't heard of before. Maybe you don't know every part of every feature in and out, but you're going to have some level of comfort, at least, with the terminology and what exactly is being tested on. All right, my tip number 3 is to utilize the existing resources that are out there. And the first one I recommend, not only for certifications, but just learning Salesforce in general, is Trailhead. Trailhead is a great place to kind of get your, dip your foot in the water on pretty much any topic out there with Salesforce. And there's even a lot of kind of pre-built trails specifically for studying for a lot of the exams. If you go to the certification page on Trailhead, not only will you find the study guide there, but sometimes you'll find trails that help you study for the exam. Some of them even have flashcards. Some of them are very long, built out in-depth things with modules and documentation and things like that. So Trailhead is definitely a great place to start. Speaking of documentation, that's the next place I would recommend going as well. There's so many kind of features out there, and there's so many ins and outs of them, and a lot of the certification tests ask you not only kind of what a feature is and how to use it, but maybe some of the limitations of the features. And so documentation, again, is a great place to read about some of those limitations about features. Maybe you've used them before, maybe you haven't. I'm finding new limitations all the time from features I've used for a long time and just didn't know there was a limitation on it until somebody reports it. And so documentation is a great place to capture all of that if there's something maybe you don't have as much experience working with. On top of Trailhead and the documentation, there's a ton of content out there with other people posting blog posts and just kind of their experiences taking the exam. And I think that's also kind of a great place to go look, see what other people's experiences are, maybe remind you that it's not impossible to pass these exams. And again, kind of give you some reassurance. What's on the study guide is actually what's on the exam. And maybe some tips and tricks for various things to focus on studying as well. And the last resource I would recommend utilizing if your company is able to put up some money for it are the Salesforce courses. Salesforce has a lot of great instructors that teach deep dives into topics. Great for certifications, of course, but also just great for learning in general. Really, nothing beats experience. And the more in-depth knowledge you can get on a topic, the better it's going to help you not only for the certification, but in your day-to-day job as well. And so if you're able to take some of the Salesforce courses that are out there, I highly recommend those as well. All right, my tip number 4 is to get hands-on. And what I mean by that is you're studying for a new exam, create a new dev org and start playing around with it, right? Maybe you are taking an exam on the Sales Cloud Consultant. Start playing around with some of the Sales Cloud features. Or maybe you're taking the integration architecture exam. Get a new dev org and start actually building some of those integrations, right? I've always found it's helpful to make sure you're using the features you're studying for, right? It's going to be very difficult to pass an exam if all you're doing is, and it's going to be very difficult to study for the exam if all you're doing is reading endless documentation. I'm going to get bored if I'm trying to study that way for sure. And so by actually using some of these features, it'll give you a better sense of not only, make it more interesting, but also maybe help it stick in your mind a little bit more. Right. At the end of the day, there's that old adage, actions speak louder than words. In this case, I think it kind of applies as well, where the actions you take to use the features are going to be more impactful than just reading the words on a page. A lot of the limitations with different features we've experienced because we use these features in our day-to-day, jobs. So if there's a feature you haven't used before, it's going to be a lot more impactful if you hit the limit in a dev org playing around with it than if you read about a limitation and document somewhere. And so I think it's going to be very helpful for the studying process, actually using what it is that you're studying. Right. And then I would say my last tip is for actually taking the exam itself. One of the things I always try to do is do a first pass. Right. And what I mean by that is go through the exam, right? You know how much time you have, how many questions there are, and you can kind of figure out, all right, I have a minute per question, or I have a minute and a half per question, or 45 seconds per question, whatever it may be. And you can figure out, all right, at the halfway point, I need to be done with this many questions, things like that. One of the kind of a very unfortunate feeling, I would say, is when you finish an exam and you didn't pass and you didn't answer 10 questions. and maybe you didn't pass by a couple, 5 questions, and maybe you would have passed, maybe you wouldn't, right? You didn't know because you didn't actually get to those questions. So I would say any question you know immediately, just go through the exam once. If you know the question, if you know the answer immediately, maybe even before you see the choices, answer it. If you don't know the answer almost immediately, that's fine. Maybe give it your best guess. What's your gut telling you? What kind of makes sense? Are there any answers you can rule out immediately, right? Maybe there's a multiple choice with 4 answers. You know that at least 2 of them are wrong. And so now you have a 50-50 shot. If you don't know it, use that mark to review later option. And then at the end of the exam, you can go through all those questions you've marked to review later, and you can kind of give them a second pass and try to maybe spend a little more time on them if you have it, but at least you'll make sure you answer all the questions you know because you'll have gotten to all the questions. Now, when you're doing that kind of second pass over the questions you wanted to review later, try to identify some patterns, right? Maybe there's 10 questions you mark to review later, and you make a mental note, all right, 5 of them are dealing with flow, or 3 of them are dealing with permission sets, right? Maybe there's a pattern of something you didn't study as much. And so when the scores come back at the end tell you, okay, well, you scored 30% in a certain section, the section could be pretty broad. But if you'll have kind of made that mental note of maybe a feature that you need a little more help with, it'll definitely help you studying on the retake. And again, use those post-exam scores, right? They're there for a reason, again, to help you studying. Don't look at it as a failure, look at it as a learning opportunity, right? There's a good chance you got a pretty decent score, even if you didn't get quite a passing score. There's a lot you already know, and just a little more you need to get over the hump. So utilize those patterns, utilize those post-exam scores, and get right back on the horse, rescheduling the exam, going through the study guide again, utilizing the existing resources, getting hands-on, and making sure you're answering all the questions you know. With that, thank you so much, and best of luck on your certification exams.
If you found this content helpful, we would really appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel and like this video. It really helps us a lot. And with that, we're at the end. Do you have tips for preparing for an exam or taking an exam? Comment below. We would love to hear what video topics you want us to cover in future videos in the comments as well. If you've made it to this point, we want to take an opportunity to say thank you. Since you've stayed with us, here's a bonus tip. Everyone fails exams. Use this as a learning opportunity. Review your feedback and see where you need to study to pass the next time. Lastly, retake your exam 2 weeks or less after your failed exam. Thank you for spending time with us. Please like and subscribe to our channel because we share weekly content to support your tech and Salesforce learning journey. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss a new video. We also handpick these videos which we recommend you watch next. Connect with us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and on 100daysoftrailhead.com, all of which are listed below. Thank you for learning with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.